Hey everyone, and welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Derek Bittner, and I'm joined today by Andre Seegers to discuss our recent playtime with Splatoon 2 single player. So let's get started. Alright Andre, we are some of the privileged few that got this game in early. A lot of people are dying to play Splatoon 2, and we've actually had the opportunity. I believe both of us have actually finished the game entirely, though we can't actually talk beyond basically World 3. So
right, so what, halfway-ish, I'd say?
A little bit more than halfway, yeah. So what have you thought of your time so far?
It's tough, right? And I know we actually feel a little bit differently about this. So I mean, I liked it, I enjoyed it. At the same time, it is literally Splatoon 1's campaign again, or in the same exact style as Splatoon 1, with some very minor changes. So normally, I mean, an easy thing, in fact, I'm sure we'll see this, like, if you like Splatoon 1's campaign, you'll like Splatoon 2, but it's the exact same style and setup. I don't know if I agree with that, though, because I didn't, or up to World 3, of course, that's all we're talking about. I didn't like that as much as Splatoon 1's first 3 worlds. Just because in Splatoon 1, like, it was so new and fresh. I mean, and that's part of it. Like, part of it was so, like, it just came down to the intrinsic nature of the gameplay, which is brand new then. The mere act of discovering that through the course of the campaign was fun. And everything built around and on top of that, so it worked really well. Here, now that I'm familiar with the core gameplay, there's not much here to keep me compelled to, like, you know, pull me through the campaign. It's like, this is all kind of fairly standard stuff, which is great if you're new to the game. Like, if you're brand new to Splatoon 2 and haven't played the first one, this campaign's probably great. You're probably gonna have a really good time with it. As one who played the first one and really enjoyed it and played the hell out of the first one, or the first game in general, it's like this is all kind of, you know, old hat to me almost. And there is some new stuff in there, we'll get to that. So, yeah, I mean, just to summarize, like, it's still fun. It's just not nearly as fun as the first one. Again, only in the first 3 worlds.
So you're saying the seafood's going a little bad?
I mean, basically, yeah. It's not. I mean, it's not fresh anymore, right? And I guess, I mean, that's my main complaint. Like, you know, they just didn't do enough to freshen up the campaign. Whereas I feel like there's so much more they could do to explore there. Instead, they literally just follow the same template as the first one. Almost to a T, just, you know, just adding in a few new mechanics.
Yeah, I know where you're coming from there, because you're right. It isn't that much different from the original. You're still going through the same process of finding the kettles, inking the kettles, going through a linear path, although they do mix it up here and there in how you do it. But for the most part, it is just a linear path that you're following along, looking for secrets if you want to, collecting power eggs, splatting enemies, all that good stuff. It does feel very similar. But I never minded it as much as you did. I know that, like, you wanted this fresh, new, expansive experience because of how just new and different the first one was. But maybe because I did the analysis and I was aware of what was coming, like, I knew it wasn't going to be anything quite like that. And I was okay with it because the thing I didn't expect was how they were handling the weapons, where every time you went into a new stage at a certain point, you're given a different weapon to use, and it really forces you to try out these new weapons and actually play through them, because the only way you could do that in the original game is with the amiibo and specific amiibo missions. And it felt old because when I did those, because yeah, I was getting a new experience with a different weapon, but it was the same stage I'd already encountered before, and
it wasn't built with a weapon in mind.
Exactly. And you get that so much more this time around in the single player. Like, I said it in my preview, I suck with the ink charger. At least now I'm a little bit better. I'm definitely not great, but I at least felt like the game was teaching me how to better use it, tactics for what good ways to put it to its fullest use. And I even screwed up on some of those things and made it, you know, didn't do it to their best ability, but I still was at least learning. I didn't have to throw myself into the deep end of the multiplayer and say, alright, let's see how we do with the splat charger, and get completely creamed. Now I can actually sort of test out my skills and see how I feel about it. I love that change about this, the campaign, the story mode.
Yeah, I do like that it gives you a better idea of how to use these weapons in a more, you know, chill environment, like where you're not, you know, racing against time or trying to take on opponents. Like, it's just a more, you can go more at your own pace, which is nice. So that is really, you know, that is a really good idea. At the same time, I hated every moment I had to use a charger. I don't like the charger. It goes against the very nature of how I play Splatoon, which is like very reactionary, very like off the cuff. Like I'm just moving around constantly. With a charger, it's a little bit different. You have to kind of like plan your stuff in advance. That's totally not how I play Splatoon. But putting that aside, like otherwise, I do like that change. And the levels were built with them in mind. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but actually, I don't know. Can you replay stages with a different weapon once you beat them?
I'm pretty sure you can, because they have those indicators where like you can beat it with this weapon, this weapon, this weapon. You know, like it actually shows what you haven't beaten it with. And I haven't actually attempted that myself yet. I haven't gone back through, because there is a few that really feel geared toward the charger, for instance. I'm like, how is that going to work with something that does not have that range, like the splatter shot? And
so I'll tell you how that works, but I just remembered I actually did replay a stage with a different weapon, and I believe there was even dialogue from Marie being like, "Hey, you're gonna have to use your ink bombs here or something to target the things."
Okay, so that's interesting. Like I'm very curious how I'll have to replay a few of these levels and see how they really go about, because I'm curious whether or not they you get any kind of bonus for completing every stage with every weapon.
I'm sure someone will find out. I don't know if we will.
I might take the time. Who knows?
So, real quick, just to double check the mechanic we're talking about, where you shoot the. What were they, like light bulbs or switches, and it pulls you to them?
Splat links, I think they called them.
Splat links?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. What world was that in? We can talk about that.
Yeah,
right?
we can talk about that. That was very early on, the very first ink charger level we had, with all the giant blimps and those crazy guys. It's amazing how I did feel overwhelmed at times. Like I'm trying to take care of them and explore, because I actually took the time to try to find all of the sunken scrolls and the new Sardinium. You didn't worry about that quite as much, because, well, I'm the one doing the guide for it, so I have to find all that stuff.
Yeah, I decided to just power through the campaign, so...
Yeah, you got through the campaign a lot quicker than I did because of that.
Yeah, so I guess we should probably touch on some of the other new mechanics here. We have these new bouncy platforms, which, in the level they were in, I actually thought that was a lot of fun. But actually, that's probably one of the most different feeling levels in the game, where there's one point where you go up super high, and then you fall, and then you're dropping down this like really tall shaft, I think, and it almost felt like it reminded me a little bit of Mario Galaxy in that moment. I'm like, this is like a total Mario thing going on here, and you're like, you have to steer yourself in the air a little bit. It was cool. I like that. I actually, the first time I did that one, I got to that section and I accidentally fell off and hit the bottom, and looked up and there's just all these opportunities for more power eggs. I'm like, screw that! I killed myself and went back up there to try again. Nice. So let's touch on all of these real quick. Okay. So what do you think of the bouncy platforms?
Bouncy platforms, I really like the bouncy platforms. Like I wish the Octolings themselves were or Octarians were on them a little bit more often than they are, because it does make it tricky to shoot them, but they're rarely there. It's usually you bouncing around and they're in a stationary position, which could be just as tricky, but I like that sort of extra aiming challenge to hit them, since you can't incapacitate them, because the bounce pads don't actually don't carry ink. But
incapacitate or incapacitate?
Both. But no, like they did feel different. They injected a bit of platforming into the levels.
It did. And you can hold jump too to bounce even higher, so you have some control over it as well. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. That was fun. Next up, of course, one of the biggest ones even are the grind rails. The grind rails are probably the biggest new thing in this game. I agree with that. It's the one that pops the most frequently, but at the same time, I would guess the most frequently. I'm not sure on that. At the same time, I actually hope they would appear a little bit more, at least in the first 3 worlds.
Yeah, they did. I mean, we obviously can't say too much about that, but they are very frequent. But they took their time building up to them in the early going, and they're all very simplistic at first. But I can say they get a bit more complex as you go along. And did you miss the old ink rails? Because they're not in the single player at all. Yeah, they're not. I did miss them a little bit. Yeah, but I liked on those. So the main difference is, I mean, they look very similar, and on the grind rails, you can even go into your squid form and scoot along it that way, which I think may be a little bit faster. I'm not totally sure on that. Yeah. But the main difference though is with the ink rails is that, of course, one, you can't grind, but you have full control over where you go. You go forward and back at your own pace. The grind rails are one way only. You're going forward no matter what. But otherwise, you can shoot on them, which is fun, and you can do a full 360 on them, and you can also jump off of them. And the game makes use of that mechanic a few times later on.
So yeah, I actually did miss the ink rails, but at the same time, I really enjoy the grind rails. I wanted more of them. Whenever they were incorporated, I'm like, oh, this is really fun. Like, this is really cool. And I think they could have gone even farther with them than they do, at least early on. And I would love to see them play with that concept a little bit more, because I thought it was neat.
Yeah, I actually did not miss the original ink rails at all. I liked the idea of the grind rails and the hopping back and forth between them in order to either get more power eggs or avoid a certain obstacle or stuff like that. Like, it really kept you a lot more active and a lot more on your toes, because for the most part, you can go at your own pace. You don't really need to rush that often in the campaign. The grind rails really put forth this idea that you got to be on the ball, because you can very easily miss things or not do the best that you want to. Like, oh, I missed that power egg. I want to get that stuff so I can power up my weapons and all that. So I like it. They are probably one of the best new additions, and I don't really miss the ink rails, because it was kind of cool to go around and go to these weird positions, but I don't know, they just didn't really add much to me.
I like them because you could kind of plan what you wanted to do. Like, you could take, I mean, it didn't come into effect too often, but you could like kind of survey what's coming up and choose where you want to drop down from, whereas you don't really have that option so much with the ink rails or the grind rails, because you don't have time. But so actually that reminds me of one thing. One thing I wish I had done with the grind rails that what made me completely forget about the ink rails is if you actually could turn around on them. If you could like jump and like reverse in the air and grind the other way, I'd be totally down with that.
Yeah, kind of cool. I think you'd lose a little bit of the challenge of being able to hit everything along the way, because that, if you could turn it any.
I'm fine with that.
But if you.
All right, moving on. Boost pads. Wait, I had no idea about these going in. I'm sure they were in one of the trailers, but I never noticed them in them. What do you think of these? Basically, you touch it and it just shoots you along whatever direction it's facing, whether it's up a wall or across a short gap. And it works in both ink and kid form.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's fine.
They're there.
Yeah, it didn't really add that much. Like, the most exciting things you would get is if you get launched into the air because of them. But otherwise, like, it just leads to more sort of simple timing puzzles, and that's about it.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I actually found them a little bit annoying. I'm like, it's these things. I mean, they didn't pop up that often, so it's not a big deal. But, like, they're not that fun to use, unlike some of these other mechanics, which are fun to use. But they're just kind of there. And there's this one segment, particularly early on, I think maybe even the level they're introduced in, where you have this square area, like there's this platform, there's a bunch of them in a row, and you kind of figure out, like, which order to go on them in. And that one, to me, just felt like a level creator. Like, just some dude in a level creator slapped down a whole bunch of these. Like, what can I do with them? And that part felt weird to me, so...
Yeah, I know which part you're talking about. Not a highlight, because I didn't even use them. I got done, I was like, looked at them, and I'm like, oh, it was meant so I could like get around all the enemies, and I did not do that at all, because I took care of them before I even got to that point. So that part did feel a little haphazard, and there's nothing inherently wrong with the boost pads, but they don't really feel like they add that much.
No, they don't. Alright, ink furlers. You, basically they're these spooled up, I guess platforms. You just shoot them and they unroll like carpet, and then it creates a little platform for you to go on, but only for a few seconds before they roll back up on themselves.
Yeah, I like them. I like them because they add a timed element to a bit of the platforming, or just making sure to keep an eye on them to make sure they don't roll you back up, and they can instantly take out enemies. So I like that double use, and you can, I don't know, it feels good to use them against enemies, especially when they have shields, because it just instantly destroys them, no matter what they are.
One of the bigger differences involves an enemy, a new enemy type, and I guess we can touch on the enemies in general here. But that's I forget what they're called, but they're these little Octoling dudes, and they usually, I think they almost always hold a key even, right? Or they often hold a key. You have to chase them down. Yeah,
that is very off. Like, they start out with only one or two at a time, and then eventually they bring out a lot more that you have to chase down, because they do play a lot with the keys. Like, I feel like I was gathering keys in this game a lot more often than the original game. And these guys might have a little something to do with that, because, you can get one and get the key and go forward, but you could also find secrets if you take down the other one and use its key on some other place. But yeah, actually chasing them down, they are slippery little suckers.
Yeah, they are. I think they have suckers too.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, because
they're tricky.
No, they are fast, and they're constantly laying ink mines behind them, and they have this little ink that they shoot in front of them. So it's really hard to actually trap them. You have to really lead your shots and chase them down.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it involves like doing these really precarious jumps to get ahead of them or cut them off. It's they can be tricky. Tricky because they have keys.
I get it.
Yep. What do you think of the enemies in general in this game? Because there are some new ones there, although I am having trouble recalling all of them at the moment.
Yeah, I'm sort of the same way, where they all sort of blend together. Like, there's some small variations. Like, I like the new Gatling enemies that are kind of like the Octo Snipers. I think they're Octo Splatlings or whatever they might be called. But them charging up like that, they can pressure you quite a bit, and they're fun to fight. The Octo Snipers, I feel like the Octo Snipers are much harder in this game than they were in the original. There's this one section where there's one in the center and you cannot reach him. You have to do a bit of platforming and dodging him as you're working your way towards the center to finally splat him. And he hit me quite a lot. Like, that one was actually pretty tough.
I know what you're talking about. That part actually was pretty tough. So, I mean, at least compared to the other levels up to that point. So yeah, I thought. I mean, I liked both them, and then the Splatling Octolings or whatever. Like, I actually quite enjoyed those enemies, but they are tough. I mean, they're probably the toughest enemies in the game, minus the bosses.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Because I didn't really have much trouble with the Octolings themselves. The new Octarians, they weren't that bad. I did like the element. There was it wasn't a challenge, but it was something if you cared about, like where a lot of the Octarians had the orange balloons that have power eggs inside them. So if you shoot the Octarian first, the balloon will drift away. So it has this extra challenge, like, oh, I want that, so I need to actually hit the balloon first so I can get the most amount that I can. And I was constantly thinking about that.
Maybe it was just me. Or it might have been the weapon I was using. It's tough targeting those guys when they're ballooning in and they're like swaying back and forth, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like that, you can. Yeah. I've missed my shot a few times and splat them instead of the balloon. I'm like, dang it! I'm like trying to chase after, and it's just not happening.
Yeah. Now you mentioned the Octarians, right?
Well, the Octarians are the usual enemies. The Octolings are the ones that are
So those mostly only pop up in the more open levels, right? The like the stadium, the ones that use actual arenas from the multiplayer, right?
Yes.
Which also happened in the first game as well. But their implementation is a little bit different this time. In that the first game kind of almost treated them like it added obstacles and basically turned them into linear levels for the most part, where you actually had to go through the levels in a set way and get to the end, I think, like a typical level, basically.
Yeah.
This time, though, they made them much more open-ended in that there are, I think, eight mini Zapfish to find, so you can go about them in any order. So I'm wondering what you thought of that versus how they handled it in the first game.
I didn't mind it so much. Like I could easily usually what I did was I got 7 of them, and then I went around and explored all the secrets so I could find the hidden goodies. And some of them are hidden pretty well. Like, I was surprised. Like, you'd think this big open area you can go anywhere, you're not going to really miss them. It wouldn't be that bad, but they can actually get really tricky in where they hide these things. And as far as fighting the Octolings themselves, I didn't find them that bad, but I did like the fact that they were all using different weapons. Like, they would use the slosher, the roller, all that good stuff, and it made them a little tricky.
Yeah, I mean, it did. I guess, so these levels in general, I wasn't that big a fan of this time. I think I preferred the original idea before, where they kind of like turned them into these new pseudo-linear levels. Here, it just felt, it felt like you're just exploring the multiplayer arena, and just grabbing these 8 things. Which,
that is a good point. It did feel a little less structured in that way, because the Octolings, you got me doing it now, were constantly coming in after you. But there was a certain point where once you took them all out, they didn't come back.
And it's only the Octolings too, right? There's no other enemies in these levels.
Early on, the Octolings are pretty much it. Although they do start them out harder before, because they have the seaweed versions, which are the stronger ones, very early.
That's true.
So they're definitely offering, trying to add a little bit more challenge to it in that way.
Well, speaking of challenge, did you have any trouble, or how much trouble did you have going through these levels? At least for the first 3 worlds, of course.
Yeah, always with that sort of in mind.
Yep.
Not too much. Like, I died on occasion, but not. Yeah, I got some game overs, like I lost all my lives, but it wasn't because of the levels themselves. It was usually because of me trying to find the secrets, and then because of that, it did add that extra bit of challenge where the Octolings could get or Octarians could get a pot shot on me and shove me off the level.
I think I got one game over in the first 3 worlds of the game. So yeah, I think again it's just like it's how familiar you are with Splatoon. If you're familiar, you're probably going to have no trouble bruising through most of these early levels, or the first half of the game roughly. But if it's new to you, I could see it being a lot trickier then, because it's easy to forget, like coming to grips with the mechanics of Splatoon, there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
It's a weird concept, and once it clicks, like that's when it's really fun. But as for one who it clicked for 2 years ago, the early game's pretty easy going, I found.
No, there really isn't too much of a challenge in that way. I mean, you know what you're doing. It's just you get that adjustment period because now you're using the Pro Controller or whatever else you might be using on the Switch, and then once you got that down, you're good to go. You really are.
Yeah.
So it's not that bad.
Indeed.
Although there is that, I actually forgot to mention this in my preview, there is that new mechanic about your armor, where you can get down to basically no armor, and it really slows your character down. Like, you don't move as fast, and you're really left in a vulnerable state, but you're not instantly inked. Or splatted, I should say.
Yeah, that's right. And you have to wait for it to come back.
Yeah, there's a little bit of recharging health, but you're it's that, but you're also like you're not at your full capabilities. You are in a lot of trouble.
Speaking of full capability, so I think I'm sure you touched on it in the preview, but yeah, the way upgrades work this time is a little bit different than before too.
Yeah, because now before it was just you needed power eggs, and that's all you really needed. Now you need Sardinium as well. It's just this extra step, and I think it's just more there to add another collectible, something to search for in the levels. Although they're generally easier to find in the Sunken Scrolls, I believe, than the first game, or even just in general. But yeah, you got the Sardinium in there, which sort of adds that bit. But I also feel like everything's a little bit more expensive this time around. Like, we've beaten it. I still haven't upgraded. Like, I upgraded my tank to its max level, and I unlocked all the sub weapons, and I upgraded my splatter shot once, and I did not upgrade any of the other weapons available. So I feel like they expect you to play through with each of the weapons through every level in order to actually be able to upgrade everything, because holy crap, it actually is pretty expensive to get through it all.
No, it is. I agree. Like, I bought the first upgrade a few levels in, and then it took me a while before I could afford another upgrade that I wanted. So yeah, so it's definitely spaced out in this. I would recommend, by the way, although I don't think it's necessary at all, I played through most of the game with like unupgraded weapons. I would recommend upgrading your splatter shot, just because the fire rate is so annoyingly slow on default levels.
Oh yeah, it definitely takes a while. Fortunately, once you get it up to the second bit, you're good to go. That's that second level, exactly. But that first bit, I started shooting. I'm like, oh right, it is this slow. I'm like just watching it go poo, 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 poo. It's like,
God, I know you can see each individual shot.
I know, it was awful.
It felt like Neo dodging bullets.
Why can't I hit anything?
What did you think? What was your favorite weapon to use though? Like, which weapon did you find yourself gravitating toward? Because that is a big thing in this game. It's for the most part you can now use whichever weapon you want, minus a few stages where you're forced to use a particular weapon.
I was always like my two mainstays were always going back and forth between either the splatter shot once it was upgraded and the dualies.
Yeah, same here. Like, I kept switching to dualies whenever I had the opportunity to, although I went back to the splatter shot a couple times as well. So I just like the rapid fire nature of those weapons.
Yeah, same here.
What do you think of using the roller though this time for levels?
Not too bad. I like the specific challenges it added, and it really encouraged you using the new jumping splat, where it goes farther but not as wide. And I thought they used that quite well in the ways that you used it, and it became very useful to use that technique in a lot of areas as well. So I didn't mind it. I didn't mind the roller. It was I actually generally enjoy using the roller. It's just I gravitate towards the rapid fire weapons like you.
Yeah, I mean, it was a nice change of pace. I agree. It's only the charger that I really don't like. So,
yeah, like
freaking charger.
Love my slosher. The slosher's still fun too. You can definitely say that. Splatling, it's kind of like the charger, but it's they get that rapid fire. It's you just gotta pace yourself a little bit better.
Exactly.
So, but like I said, I like that they forced you to use a lot of these weapons. I'm not always a fan of using every weapon, but at least it was like, hey, we're going to teach you how to do this, so maybe you'll like it.
It does feel better balanced in that sense, for sure. Like, yeah, it does a better job of training you up on all the weapons, which now I wonder, like, how much, because I always use the splatter shot in the original game, how much of it was me just liking the weapon versus how much of it was just a campaign teaching me how to be good with that weapon.
That could be. That could be. So
Yeah.
maybe if you play every level with the charger, you'll actually be a fan of it, Andre.
Maybe. What do you think of the boss fights?
Oh, I love them. I love them. They
Yeah,
are
I thought-
just as creative as the first time around, especially the two that we can talk about.
Yeah, yeah, we can only talk about two,
and
unfortunately.
if you've been keeping up the preview materials, you know what those bosses are. But again, just the creativity, the scale of it, it feels like a big challenge. And some of the later ones are better.
They are, yeah, and I love the intro to the boss. Like the intros each boss have.
Oh, yeah.
Like where they just pop out of the ground, like to the chanting. Like, yeah, this is getting me hyped.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's like dun dun dun. It's like, all right, bring it on. I'm ready to take
Yeah.
these guys down.
Yeah, I think the bosses are my favorite part of the game, straight up,
Totally.
for the single player campaign.
I'd agree with that. I'm always looking forward to the next boss fight. And they're funny as well. Like one of the things we did not mention here is that, of course, Captain Cuttlefish is not around this time. He's not dead. He's just not around. And Marie is now your sort of earpiece, along with Sheldon on occasion. And my God, is she hilarious. She is one of the best parts of this campaign because she's just constant with the puns and
puns,
yeah,
yeah.
the puns and just snide comments and just other just jokey bits. It breathes a little bit more life into the campaign, and I think Captain Cuttlefish was a little dry in comparison, and Marie's so much better about just keeping the humor coming. And like I knew, like you were appreciating the fight against the first boss with all of her puns going on there because she was just laying them out.
Oh yeah, she was. Yeah, man, it was nonstop. Yeah, no, so I agree. So I agree with that. Like on a 1-to-1 basis against like Captain Cuttlefish, I agree with that. But yeah, I thought she was incorporated well. But once we get a little bit farther into the game, which yeah, I probably can't really talk about. Yeah, like I actually kind of miss Captain Cuttlefish a little bit. Now that's for reasons we'll have to save for another discussion, I think.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, I thought Marie was handled pretty well. So
Yeah, I think so. It's been, like I said, I really did enjoy the single player. I thought the new elements kept it fresh enough. I know it wasn't exactly it's definitely same old, what you'd expect. There's not really, I wouldn't say there's going to be any major surprises in what you're doing. But what is there, I really had fun with. And I think that's the difference between our opinions, because I think you wanted just a little bit something new, something different about all this.
yeah, I mean, it just felt by the numbers. Like if you played Splatoon 1 single player, you already know exactly what to expect from this one. Which for some people that may be totally fine. I mean, even I did like this campaign. Just at the same time, I found it disappointing compared to the first one because that one was so fresh and new, and this one is just more of the same. Which again, the core is still solid. But I was hoping for something of a little bit more ambitious nature here. Something, just a little bit grander than what we'd seen before, and that's not quite what we got. Again, up to the first 3 worlds.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about mostly gameplay here and a few things on the side, but we both have some interesting thoughts on the music.
Yeah! I'll let you go first.
Yeah, because I'm pretty much in agreement with you. I did say in the preview that I think this is the only part that feels like a downgrade. Like they have some tunes from the original that are in there, and they still work just as well.
They're the exact same tune.
Exactly.
I don't think they changed them at all.
Yeah, the certain tunes that they bring back basically are the same, and the new ones are just kind of low key.
I'll be honest. I think this may be part of the reason why I didn't enjoy the campaign as much. It's obviously not the only reason, but I've touched on others. I mean, clearly, but I think that is part of it. Like. The music here just felt so much like more. It took more of a background role as opposed to Splatoon 1, where it's kind of more in your face. Like it felt funkier. It was like it felt like it complemented the kind of like wacky action, and I really like that. Yeah. Here, I don't think I can remember like a single. I can't hum a single song right now. Like they're not bad. They're not bad songs by any means. But it just it lost a little bit of something, I think, with 2. And it's funny because this is something I actually noticed right away from the initial song we got from I guess the title screen from the test fire.
Yeah.
I was gonna call it test punch. I'm so used now that I'm used to test punch. Like I can't go back to test fire. Where like I like that song too, but it wasn't as infectious as the tunes from the original song or from the original Splatoon for me. And that I'm feeling the same way here with the campaign. The music's good. It's just not as catchy as it was in 1.
Yeah, it's too early for me to say that about the multiplayer songs because I know there's a
well, I haven't heard them all either.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't heard the multiplayer
fun,
songs, but for the single player, at the very least, they do just feel a little bit more subdued, which is weird because the Octarians are all about being strange and different, and it's almost like, oh yeah, you know these guys, you know, they're not so weird anymore, that kind of thing. And it is a bit of a shame, like that. There are a few like in here that I do think stand out a little bit, at least one, maybe because I heard it so often because I was constantly replaying this one stage to try to find one of the sunken scroll, but that one did stick in with me, and there are some things to really appreciate about the songs and what they do, but again, they don't quite have that punch there. Though I think, obviously, there's a lot of potential for the rest of the songs, though, because I do love Off the Hook's song from the direct, and that's in there, of course. And that song's really good. Like they do have good new music in here, just nothing that I really experienced there. Nothing in these first 3 levels that really got me going.
I agree. So yeah, I mean, we should remind everyone we've literally only played a single player campaign so far. The multiplayer doesn't work at all quite yet, or the multiplayer's not online yet, so we haven't been able to test that, and we won't even be able to talk about that until the review embargo goes up. And that's obviously a huge part of the game. So don't take even though I may be a little bit disappointed at this point, like that is only in relation to the campaign so far. And
I also want to assure you, like I really am just talking about the first 3 worlds here, because I do think there are. Yeah, don't want to get in trouble, but yeah, I do also want to mention the visuals, because I had a hard time noticing a difference at first during the whole preview stage, but as soon as I got it and actually had it on my TV and looking in front of me, and I don't know if I don't remember noticing this when I was playing the test fire, but man, the ink is gorgeous in this game. Like that, it has that little glitter, like flakes of glitter in it now that really makes it pop.
The game looks awesome, straight up. It looks really good. It runs at, reportedly 1080p, and I'm pretty sure I can see that difference. Like the game looks sharper than before, and not only sharper, like it looks even more brighter and more vibrant. Like I saw some comparisons comparing like the Splatoon 1 to Splatoon 2, like in the shops and whatnot, and like the lighting just looks way better across the board. No, the game looks sharp. I think the game looks really good overall.
No, absolutely.
And of course, it runs flawlessly too at 60 frames per second, at least in the story mode.
Yeah, no dips whatsoever. It's all on the whole. But yeah, the funny enough, the part that stood out to me the most is the ink, because you see it so often, and I don't know why I didn't notice it before, if they didn't have it before. But yeah, making that ink have just a little bit more texture.
Well, I thought the ink always looked good, but it definitely looks at least as good here too. So, especially like with how you can see it dripping down walls, for instance, or
yeah, it all looks good. It's a good little package. There's a lot to like, and I'm dying to play the multiplayer. I want to get into it so badly.
Yeah, I know, right? It's just taunting us. It won't even let us. We can't even start it. It's like, nope, you can't play it yet, so don't even try.
Yep, don't even try it. And we can't. We could do local, except there's only 2 of us, and we're across the country, so we're kind of boned there.
Yeah, I know, right?
So yeah,
that's too bad. I want to play multiplayer.
Yep, I'm looking forward to going online and seeing if we can tear it up. Gotta see if you get your reputation back.
Seriously,
just gotta get that Splattershot Junior. But yeah, I mean, we obviously can't say much. But what do you think of Inkopolis Square so far?
So the square's fine. I found myself again, like when compared to Splatoon 1, I don't find it quite as charming. Like I don't like the feeling of being boxed in. I felt like Splatoon 1's Inkling or Inkopolis Plaza was more open, and I just like that more open air feel. Like I liked how you could see the Ferris wheel off in the distance. Here it feels like it's harder to see like cool details that really gave you like the sense of place. So I mean, this is nitpicking now. But yeah, I mean, if I had to say like between the 2, I like the original, but this one's fine and serviceable. So
yeah, I didn't notice much of a difference, but I did. We did talk about this last night when we first brought this up, and I took a look, and you're right. It does, like the way the buildings are structured, it just feels a lot more closed in on you. It doesn't have that big openness, and maybe that's because we had a big see-through tower before, and now it's just another building. and that may have a bit of a difference, but I like the layout. I mean, it's mostly the same as what it was before. It just doesn't have a second level, and I don't know. It doesn't bug me too much, but I also haven't really had much time to really look at it because I haven't really had a point.
Did you notice the construction area behind the starting point in the square?
I did notice that, so hopefully we could see expanded.
Yeah, future development, that's what I'm thinking. Probably a new building or something.
I would love that. Do something.
Although that would actually totally close off the area if it's a whole new building, so I wouldn't like that.
Hey, you live in this city.
Oh, there's nothing to look at.
You live in this city, I figured you'd be all down for that. Buildings everywhere.
Hey, yeah, from my window right now, I can see at least a couple miles away, so... in fact, I can see like a Splatoon like overpass right there with cars. I just saw a truck drive by. So.
The urchin underpass in the distance.
There we go, San Francisco. Yeah, it's more true than you know.
Nice. But yeah, I mean... General thoughts. I mean, I'm surprised how long we've been talking about this, and it's just the single player.
I thought it'd be like a 5-minute discussion.
Yeah, but I mean, I obviously can't give a full review or anything like that, especially since I haven't played the single player at all. But I mean, it's multiple. Excuse me. Yeah, but no, I think we're off to a good start. It's a good sign so far. Maybe not perfect in your case, but what I've seen so far is like people are gonna like this game.
I liked it, but I'm disappointed though, just because I actually really like the Splatoon campaign. I think it's underrated, actually. So I was a little bit disappointed to see that it really is just more of the same. And that's what you want. Hey, then you will like this. If you were hoping for something a little bit different and new, you may end up like me and be a little bit disappointed with at least the portion that I could talk about. So
yeah. So I'm curious where people are going to fall on this one, because we each have our own little differences here and there, but for the most part, I think we're in agreement about what its strengths and weaknesses are. Just 2 degrees.
For sure.
So.
Indeed.
Alright, well I think that covers it for our Splatoon 2 discussion, so thank you for watching, and if you like this video, be sure to like us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain. And of course make sure to subscribe to GameXplain for more on Splatoon and other things gaming as well. Until next time, bye.